So, going off, we're going to talk about Thanos for a little bit more. So Thanos' goal, to destroy half of all life in the universe. To unalive people, right?
But why?
His reasoning why, and this makes him a very interesting villain. So you'll notice in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's some exceptions here and there, but all the best ones, aside from maybe Guardians of the Galaxy, they have a distinct, which even then, I'm getting away from myself here. They have a distinct sense of, if you want to analyze the movie based on a real life problem, they all have that. So in Iron Man 1, there's double dealing. We have Stark Industries, much like a lot of American military companies, selling weapons to both the good guys and the bad guys. In Captain America the Winter Soldier.
They do revisit that idea in Age of Ultron, though.
They do revisit in Age of Ultron. But, so in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, there's government surveillance. And there's the difference between proactive intervention and reactive intervention. And they obviously look at reactive intervention as good versus proactive intervention. You're looking for a fight when there's not one, as bad. Black Panther. There's the issues of colonialization, where you're invading a foreign territory that's not your own. Yeah, the quip colonizer. I actually loved that.
My favorite part, though, is that he's a British actor.
Yeah, Chadwick Boseman. Or no, you're talking
Martin Freeman.
Martin Freeman, yeah. So there's the issues with colonization and how human history, it's never actually really worked out for anybody. Even the colonizers, it kind of they get a little bit of short-term investment, but then they kind of they're stagnant. So this movie talked about overpopulation and resource management. That was its central thesis in its own way. Thanos' motivation for wanting to kill half of all life in the universe is because Titan, his planet, so in the comic books it's Saturn's moon Titan. But obviously I don't think it is Saturn's moon Titan in the MCU.
No.
Because this is an actual full-fledged planet with moons of its own. And at the same time, you can't have Thanos born and raised in the same solar system as Earth. It just doesn't make any sense, right?
Earth would already be gone because of the history.
The proximity.
Because of the history they gave Thanos.
And even, if we go to comic book origins, Earth is the origin of the Titans. They're Eternals, which they're basically gods that were blessed by the Celestial, or not blessed, but empowered by the Celestials by genetic modification. And the Titanic Eternals were offshoots of Earth's Eternals. So I don't think this is Saturn's moon. I think it's just another unrelated planet with the same name, so they can keep calling him the Mad Titan. But anyway, so Titan was overrun by population growth and lack of resources. And it's a real problem if you want to think, because Earth's population, there's been talk of us overrunning our resources. If going into a little bit of philosophy, and I was talking to Dylan and Barrick about this earlier. I can't remember the guy's first name, but there's a economic theory, a resource management theory done by a guy named Malthus, where he theorized that population growth grows at an exponential curve. So it's kind of like a half bucket shape on a graph.
And if you look at the world population over time, you can actually see that.
Yeah, it is actually exponential. Whereas resource generation and resource acquisition is a linear graph. So you eventually get to a point where you will get to a point of equilibrium, but then it shoots off and population outruns resource generation.
And then you run into what's known as the carrying capacity.
Yeah. Titan hit its carrying capacity, and they eventually died for some reason. We're not actually given a reason why they died aside from that.
So yeah, I would assume that the entire planet broke out into chaos. There was some war over food management.
Yeah.
And nukes flew. And the vast majority of the planet was killed in this fight.
And that's a good justification for it.
They Mad Max, basically.
Nukes flew, everyone's dead but Thanos for some reason. Thanos suggested to the Titan leaders about doing a random chance lottery. If you lost the lottery, 50% of the population died, or 50% would lose, and those 50% would just be killed.
With an equal chance to all, regardless of wealth or power.
Yeah. So
they actually mentioned that one line in the movie.
I want to be clear that with the Infinity Gauntlet's powers. So, the idea, and this is a plot hole that I kept hinting at.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want to talk to you guys because I wanted our thoughts to be clear. Like, I haven't even looked at
Is it what I'm thinking about in terms of...
He has the Infinity Gauntlet, which is basically a item that gives him omnipotence. And his main worrying point is resource management.
He could create...
So instead of creating new resources, he decides, I'm just going to kill everyone.
Yes, and that's what I was thinking. I was like, he has the ability to now warp the fabric of space-time.
What's to stop him from making new resources?
I think the issue is... mind if I...
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it may be a matter of he literally can't take... Like, the old saying, energy can't be destroyed, it can only be...
Well, the Infinity Gauntlet breaks those rules.
Either that, or he just doesn't think of it because he's thinking of his normal goal that he's had.
But I don't know if it's a matter of simply because, well, yes, he can destroy things and turn them into energy, he's not getting rid of the mass itself. So, but
from what we know, the Infinity Gauntlet does break thermodynamic symmetry.
Yes. But what I'm saying, though, is even if that's the limitation, he could still use all the, I would say... the byproducts, everything that's just been waste, more or less, and turn that back into the renewable resources.
So actually there are theories in math that the gauntlet would still follow.
And I get that.
And it has to do with how many dimensions we view our existence in.
And I'm going to follow up through with that later when we get to theories later. Like for the fourth movie.
That's something that's not even in this podcast. That's a completely extra debate on its own.
Well, I have a reference for like a theory for the fourth movie that I'm going to talk about that later.
Okay.
Something similar to that, on those lines. But yeah, so he has the Infinity Gauntlet, which in the comic books it does break thermodynamic symmetry. It's literally just omnipotence. You can do anything in this universe. The only limiting factor to the Infinity Gauntlet is that it only works in the universe that the Infinity Stones you're using are from. Okay. So if you go to like the traditional Marvel universe,
we're getting into multi-dimensions here, which has not so far been referenced in any of the Marvel movies.
I know it hasn't. I'm just going off the comics. So in the comic books, you have the Infinity Gauntlet in Marvel 6 in the universe 616. So 616 is the mainstream Marvel universe. If you read a Marvel comic, there's a high chance, unless you're reading something from another universe, it's in 616 by default, unless they tell you otherwise. So if you have the Infinity Gauntlet from 616 and you go to 1610, which is the Ultimate Marvel Universe, your gauntlet won't work.
But you have a really snazzy gauntlet.
So yeah, I think the gauntlet would still work. You
can teleport to back home. Essentially, it's pretty much I think the only power they give it.
But the stones that you would have that you brought from your original universe would be what isn't working. The gauntlet itself should still, in theory, work. Because it's just metal.
So the way they phrase it is the Infinity Stones don't have their power there. So you'd be correct there, I would think. Anyway, it's weird, blurry limitations to it, and this is related to the comic books. So in this movie, we don't know if it breaks thermodynamic symmetry. I'm assuming it does because it does in the comics. Granted, obviously, making an assumption based on the comics doesn't always hold up in these universes, because in the comic book store can one-shot Thanos. Granted, he almost does. Anyway, so he could... I was talking to my dad after we got home from seeing the movie, and I had the conversation, and my dad was like, well, he'd just have to do it again, eventually, down the road, make more resources. And even then, I quipped, well, he's going to have to do this again at some point, because population growth is exponential.
Well, at that point, you really have to look at the potential curves, because everyone just suddenly not existing, there are 3 general potential curves that you can have from that. There's one that keeps on with that exponential curve going up. There is one where it levels off, and then there is one where it peaks and then goes back down.
Well, that's only if there's some kind of population control measures in place. Or if there's some weird stuff where all the guys died on a planet, which is probabilistically possible.
There's issues with that. There's also a bunch of psychological factors that would come into it as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
that would lead to that.
Yes, for example, let's say
that's reasonable.
There's some guy, he's just sitting there, and then all his wife, kids are gone. You don't think he's not going to be tempted to just eat a bullet?
And then you're also going to have to look at the ages at which people were killed. Like if it was all of the...
Because it was completely random.
If it just happened to be on this one planet to be all of the kids, everyone that would be left would be above a mating range.
Yeah.
To say. That planet's dead in one generation.
Yeah.
Also...
Inversely, you could also have all of the elders gone. At which point...
You're just going to balloon again really quick.
All of the kids could balloon, or they could start fighting amongst themselves and wipe themselves out.
Lord of the Flies style.
Which
which
I'm pretty sure we've discussed about this, as we don't know this, but there's also the problem of at the end of the series, you see people driving their cars, and then people
the excess deaths that are consequential.
We don't know had he thought about this, but because of the fact it's random, I don't think he did.
I don't think he cared.
Yeah,
I think he just wanted to do the 50% and be done, and he just didn't think about what comes afterwards.
And that's fair.
It was very...
See, I don't think Thanos cared what came afterwards, which equates to him, like, if you don't care about something, you're not going to give it any thought, period. And Thanos, he won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because his entire plan was to cut the universe's population by half. He did that, he won, the Avengers lost.
Which, can we give props to the fact that this is the first real movie where they actually lose?
Like, we see them lose a bit in Age of Ultron, but then they come back, so...
Yeah.
And now they actually get to avenge something.
Yeah. Anyway,
the friends they lost along the way?
Shut up. So we're getting into, like, supply and demand here. Like, we're talking about essentially supply and demand. So just because you cut the demand in half doesn't increase the supply either.
Yes. There's still a limited amount of resources.
And even if he generated more supplies, it doesn't increase or modulate the demand. It just makes it where it's accessible.
So the thing is, you are resetting this exponential curve of population.
Yeah.
So now it's going to take roughly 3 times as long to get back to the population that you were at as to what it took to get there before.
Also, since we have no idea who all died, there is the point where some companies probably aren't even able to run anymore to produce some stuff.
That's another thing.
That is a thing. But then you also have to look at the 2 parts of supply. Consumed supply and surplus supply.
Exactly.
And as this exponential curve of population goes up, the amount of surplus supply that you're able to make on any given month, and we'll go on a monthly basis as this, all of your surplus supply is going to gradually get lower and lower per month.
Yeah.
However, if you look at a cumulative surplus supply, that's going to keep getting bigger until your equilibrium hits and all of your supply is being consumed. At which point, all of your just extra surplus is going to start dwindling again.
Your surplus.
Yeah, this population being halved gives that extra surplus a chance to build back up,
but
at an exponential rate now.
Speaking of supplies, you gotta you have to think about it as resource. It's always resources. There are resources that you cannot remake. You just can't.
Well, it's and I was talking about this earlier, because my basic premise for starting this conversation is that Thanos' idea is not a long-term idea. It solves it instantaneously, but eventually it's gonna happen again.
It has 2, from what
I understand, for several generations, but that's as far as it works.
I think from my perspective, Thanos did not put too much effort into...
He took the easy way out.
Yeah.
The
easiest
possible solution.
He did not foresee, like, the surplus supplies.
I don't think he wanted to think about a long-term solution. He wanted his solution to happen now. He wanted instant gratification.
He didn't put it simply, he didn't do his research. He researched the Infinity Gauntlet. He researched the
Not getting political.
Yeah. He researched the Infinity Stones. That was it. He didn't go through what would happen if I cut down 50% of the population just randomly. What could happen instantly? You know, he didn't.
Well, even because it's like I'm saying, barring the Infinity Stones, which we don't, like I said, we don't know if it breaks thermodynamic symmetry. So we don't know if he can create new energy or new matter. I'm assuming it can because of comics. That being said, barring the Infinity Stones, their ambiguity, you're not creating new supply. You're not creating new resources. You're eventually still going to run out of resources.
He did see how killing 50% of a population could help because he had done it before to Gamora's planet because they had showed that.
Planet. Yeah.
So he
But
knows...
they didn't show us how it was.
Well, yeah.
He just talked to Gamora like, your planet's doing fine now.
So he knows that it works.
They also
But he doesn't know if he can do all that.
They showed a flashback of when Thanos initially met Gamora, and it's looking at Thanos and Gamora, and behind them you see this big open lane where you have
half of it's people who are going to get executed, and the other half is people who are living.
Separated by this lane, and then in between the lane and each half is a line of soldiers holding them back.
And we know that Thanos
and you see them you see them actually kill half of them.
Yeah, we don't even know if that was random selection like he's implying. So for all we know, Thanos could have actually cultivated. So these are the people who are most useful in your society. They can live. You're old and you're young and that are way before mating age or that are just consuming your resources, they can die.
Here's another thing I'm thinking about in terms of him just 50%ing. It says all life, correct?
Yes.
What's his definition of life?
Yeah, we don't know if it includes plants or animals.
And because I'm thinking, for example, Mass Effect, the Geth.
That's like we don't know how much artificial intelligence is out in the universe. So I don't even want to reference that.
So let's assume that he is instead referring
they
to
don't
as
go over that because Vision already
lies.
Sentient life.
Vision would be the one to tell us if
because
it was, but
this is essentially affecting everyone who is consuming resources.
Yes.
Humans, humanoids, Groots.
Yeah.
Because Groot did see this thing too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Even though he really doesn't consume any resources.
That we know of.
Like, we have not seen him really consume any resources aside from the water in the fountain.
I would just assume that he uses resources from the sun and from water.
Yeah.
Photosynthesis.
But using water is using a resource. So
but usually, like
however, plants naturally put water back out.
But we don't know if
usually
Groot does.
for a species, you'll see generally if one species is doing way too beneficial, and I mean as this a non-sentient like wolves or whatever, as the prey die down, it starts fluctuating. It would be that fluctuation is generally what's better, not just an instant. All right.
Well, we also know that sentient life forms, just judging from human real life curves,
we consume a lot more.
No, that is true. That doesn't apply to us. We break natural selection. We don't those rules don't apply to us.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that we wouldn't need that we still have because.
But okay, so we talked about Thanos. Is there a consensus, or does anyone disagree with the fact that this is not a good plan?
Yes, it's a bad plan.
It makes sense. He's doing a good thing, I think. He's doing the bad thing for a good reason.
He's trying to be moral about what he's doing.
So it's a good plan, but not done the right way.
It's a good plan in theory.
I don't think it's a good plan, but I agree with what his reasoning.
In theory, it's a good idea, but in practice,
it's a band-aid for the problem he's referencing.
I would say it's a.
When you're looking at very long term, yes, it's just a band-aid.
And this is from.
Which, if you're talking about intergalactic population,
the way that he
needs to be long term.
Yeah,
and this is
and even long term, we're saying on the range of 500 to 700 years for long term.
As someone because we're humans, Thanos is not a human, so that brings in. But the issue is that. I would say it's an unethical.
Very unethical.
Unethical solution.
He wasn't trying to be ethical.
It is a solution. It is a answer. An unethical solution that works short term. All in all, as I would say, as someone who has done. As someone who's I've been in leadership positions. That's a horrid idea. It's
so
bad.
Since we talked about this, and I think there is a consensus that it's probably not a good idea. It's negative. We all look at this as bad.
Guys, I gotta tell you something. 50% of us here are going to die.
Let's talk about the anti-Thanos. Now, who is the anti-Thanos?
Groot.
Tony Stark, in my opinion. judging from so the technology.
Define what you mean by an anti-Thanos, real quick.
So, Tony Stark, in my opinion, is the true answer to Thanos' issues.
I mean, he is trying to make renewable energy and all that.
His whole character arc starts off with him creating an easily accessible, easy to make, cheap, clean energy source, for one.
Not easy to make, but yes.
He did it in a cave with a box of scraps.
It's fairly easy for him.
When it's easy for him, it is nearly impossible for anyone else.
But
that's why he has a whole renewable energy tower.
He's making it, and he's
that was
marketing
only
it, and
projected to work
he's
for
selling
5
it.
years.
But at the same time,
he's tweaking
he's
it.
been, and it's been, like it was referenced, this whole situation's been on my mind since Avengers 1, since 2012. Or whenever they redid the timeline because of Homecoming.
And he is working on it currently.
Yeah, he's been working on this nonstop. So that's step 1. Step 2, the technology running his current Iron Man suit for this movie. It's entirely nanites. Nanites, by definition, are microscopic robots that are capable of manipulating matter on a subatomic level. Or not necessarily subatomic, but on an atomic level. So they can reconstruct and repurpose existing matter. That's how I think he's going to get off the planet. So, Tony Stark and Nebula are the last 2 living things on Titan. He's living with his armor mostly broken, but it's made of nanites. So, assuming it should be able to regenerate. Because nanites can also build other nanites. Given the resources, which... I'm assuming there's a full set of broken Iron Man armor that's also made of nanite particles just lying around this battlefield. He's got another armor right there. If assuming that this is how his nanites work. So nanites
it could very easily create more supply.
So exactly, nanites can repurpose matter. So there is the apocalyptic gray goo scenario where the nanites lose their original programming and start turning everything into more nanites. And then the world gets destroyed. But we're not even talking about that.
That sounds great.
It sounds amazing. Anyway.
I would like a world of gray goo.
So, Tony Stark literally just invented a technology that, if he wasn't using it for self-defense, could solve all of the issues Thanos has.
But
the only remaining issue is land.
He did use his reactor thing for self-defense, and then he repurposed it.
Exactly.
So that's what's going to happen with his nanites, most likely.
What I want to see happen in the next movie is, even if it doesn't, I'd love to see Tony Stark meeting who's the sister to...
Shuri?
Shuri, that was her name.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would love to see those two meet.
Well, she could also help him with repurposing a lot of his stuff.
With the nanites and...
With technology ideas?
Yes.
Those two going at it would be... amazing.
I'd love to see this.
And it would also be more vibranium for Tony to have access to.
But there's the thing, like, there was the whole meeting between him and Thanos before Doctor Strange negotiated for Tony Stark's life. He's like, I too am a man cursed by knowledge. I know what you're going through, Stark. And he's like trying to, like, you and I are a lot alike. This typical villain nonsense. But we are a lot more similar than you know. And then, like, he almost kills him before Strange negotiates. So, in my opinion, like, he is the perfect foil for Thanos in this movie. He's been working since day one to create renewable resources. He has a technology capable of developing for future supplies, which is one of the main issues. Like,
and
again,
he has seen how death would affect the world
exactly.
Overall.
So there is, again, we're getting a weird supply and demand because manipulating one doesn't directly manipulate the other. There are other factors involved. So increasing supply does not decrease demand, and decreasing demand does not increase supply. Eventually, you do hit that threshold. But that being said, and even referencing nanites repurposing matter, you're still gonna lose you are still thermodynamically symmetrical. So you're still getting less energy every time life cycle because you can use nanites to repurpose like feces, right? And now you have more food, for instance. But
I do love the turd burger.
I'm just using this as an example because like it's one of those things that like food is one of the first supplies that people think about, food and then energy sources. So you can actually turn waste products like feces or nuclear reactor material that's depleted into more resources to be used, but you're losing resources every time you do this, right?
But also, if you are increasing...
Because of the 10% rule,
and,
yes.
yeah, because nanites also require power.
If you're increasing any backlog of anything, at the same time you're losing space. And you can't increase the planet.
Yeah. And like I said, land is still a resource here. Of course, it makes terraforming easier, because now you have little robots. So you just shoot a canister to Mars, and in 10 years, Mars will be Earth.
But, but again, as you said, eventually, Mars will be filled up. Then you move on again and again.
So that doesn't actually work, because an actual terraforming process redefines the magnetic field of the planet.
Well, I'm using that as a reference. I'm just saying.
Nanites wouldn't.
Nanites could, though. I mean, the magnetic field of the Earth, if I'm not mistaken, is just due to the iron motion in the core of the Earth.
Yeah.
So we stop it, right?
So you just have the nanites repurpose the core of the planet because nanites can literally manipulate matter.
But then they would have to instill that motion.
True.
And then keep it going in order for that magnetic field to stay.
The thing is, like, the Earth's core is slowly slowing down. Like, our magnetic field is losing power every day. Now, it's on such a scale that, like, a human would not notice it, and we wouldn't even know that it's gone for another 100,000, years upon years.
The Earth's magnetic field is only weakening currently because we're starting the process of our poles shifting again.
Yeah.
That's the only reason it's weakening now.
But I'm saying, like, the actual core's motion is slowing down.
But I get what you're saying. Tony Stark has the tools to at least offer a much better way of doing it than what Thanos is.
Give him time, and he'll see that.
And as it's always been stated, Tony Stark doesn't think of the now. He doesn't think of the then. He thinks of the later.
Yeah. Whereas Thanos, it feels like he's trying to think of the later through the lens of the now.
As Clint said, he's the futurist. But that's also a reference to his first album that failed.
Okay. So, now that we've talked about that, I want to talk about the other central theme of the movie, beyond Malthusian economics. We took practical
economics class.
We took the practical. I can't remember the professor's name still.
The class was practical reasoning. It was a philosophy course.
Yeah, it was basically a 100 level philosophy course. I needed a free credit, and you needed a philosophy course.
Yeah,
I'd already taken like 4 philosophy classes before this, but
the course was essentially how to argue from a logical point of view.
So we talked about 2 opposing theories of ethics. So there's utilitarianism versus, what was it, deontology?
I think so.
So throughout the entire Marvel Universe, we've seen Tony Stark act through utilitarianism, which is like one above. Like, I'm willing to throw my life down to save everyone else's lives. I'm willing to make the sacrifice so that no one else has to.
He's one of those people that's like, I see my life and I see all these other people's lives, and I'm willing to risk my one life for all of these other people.
Whereas Captain America, throughout the entire movie, aside from, and they make the reference to this, and I hate they reference this, but I'm glad they did at the same time, because it shows a little bit of hypocrisy in Cap. At the end of Captain America 1, where he lays his own life down to save lives, essentially. They reference that, and he's like, that was different. And it's like, no, that's not different. It's the same thing. Okay, but the deontology is to duty, and one of the duties is to save lives. So we're trying to save every life, as many lives as possible. So, and this is best exemplified through Captain America constantly saying, we don't trade lives.
I really don't like how they were just, let's protect Vision, let's keep Vision from dying. But at the same time, I understand that they're more or less worried about the stone than they are Vision. But at the same time, they could have just destroyed that at first and not had any issue.
The problem, by the way, with that is, as you said, they don't trade lives. The issue with that is that while, yes, all your specialists, your A units are now moving away from this fight, you're basically sacrificing everyone else to save everyone else. You're sacrificing the pawns to save everyone else.
Banner did say that if they took out the stone at the right time, they could have rebuilt Vision, because all that made him was still technically there.
Yeah.
All the stone did was give him
another death
sense of
Yeah.
The stone gave him some powers, and because of how he was wired, it was still essential for his life.
Yeah.
But they
So
could
I
have
don't-
easily
I-
rebuilt him according to Banner.
So I think he's
If
probably
they had time.
Yeah.
he's probably gonna get the stone back because it is a part of him.
Well, yeah.
But that being said, like, so there's a constant refrain of we don't trade lives versus Vision. Vision is the one who best exemplified this in the movie.
He wanted to die.
He is a very utilitarian
He was
consciousness.
willing to die.
He's like, let me die to save all of you. And Cap's like, we don't trade lives. Which, in my opinion, this is one of those few times where I'm like, okay,
But
you're willing to do it.
But the hypocrisy kind of comes back in, like I said, when they said everyone fall back, save Vision, and you're sacrificing the pawns out in the front.
Yeah, I get that. But, like, so there's been a lot of discussion throughout philosophy throughout the centuries over when is the correct time to apply each moral. Because neither moral stance is incorrect.
No,
They're both correct. You just have to understand when to apply one. Like, utilitarianism is about promoting the most good, which means sometimes you have to take a compromise. Whereas deontology doesn't really believe in the compromise.
I think...
If I'm not mistaken, Dylan, I don't know how much you remember from the course.
I think...
Because it's the last time I've referenced it in my head.
It's been a year since we were last in that.
I would say it's very much risk versus reward. If you have a low probability of everyone dying, and a high probability of success, you should probably save as many lives as possible. However, if it's a high chance that everyone will die versus that one life, I would say if it's a high chance that you may lose if you don't sacrifice that one life, and a lot more people dying, I would say go for it.
And you're looking at it through a utilitarianism perspective.
But no, I'm like applying it to at that situation.
And what I'm saying is you are being utilitarian by saying that.
It's a lot easier to see it through that perspective when you think of what happened.
So going
but
off
the thing is that the reason that we can see it that way is because we saw everything that happened.
Yes.
These characters are not seeing everything, and they don't
know
all
that
that
Thanos
we know.
is going to get all the stones.
Yeah. They don't know everything that we know
and
at all.
Only Banner has seen Thanos. And Banner didn't really see him. Hulk saw him.
I mean, Doctor Strange knew.
Got his butt kicked. Doctor Strange didn't know.
He knew
I mean,
he was doing
Yeah, they were already on
seizure.
Titan at this point. But yeah, so there's a conflict here in this movie between utilitarianism and deontology, which I love when this conflict comes up in movies. And I think that the Marvel movies are the best movies that have done this. Like, it came back to Civil War. So the central thesis of Civil War was the Sokovia Accords, which were a stand-in for the comics SHRA, the Superhuman Registration Act. That required that the Avengers get registered with the UN.
Steve basically kept from doing it because Bucky.
So Steve Rogers looked at it where he gave up, and he's like, I don't trust the group, I trust the individuals that make up the group. And that's the biggest part I agreed with when it came to
But I do
Cap.
see him having a problem with trusting the UN because, remember, Hydra
This is after
was
Winter
in
Soldier.
everything.
And that was his reasoning.
Yeah.
That's one reason why he had less faith in groups and more
Yeah.
faith in the individual. And I understand that. But at the same time...
he has a good reason.
And I'm getting to that. So the Sokovia Accords were standing for the Superhuman Registration Act. Tony Stark was like, yes, we need accountability. I'm willing to do this. And once we agree to this, we can actually work out the fine details.
I feel like only Tony needed accountability, TBH.
I think they all needed accountability. Literally, Scarlet Witch blew up a building on accident.
But still,
But what would Captain America do? Throw a shield?
Another thing
Sorry,
is
that
that
joke.
the government in the Marvel Universe does start most of the problems. If you think about it.
A little bit. I can see it.
I mean, they were the ones that destroyed Harlem, not Hulk.
But at the same time, so going back to that, not to the Hulk, trying to figure out how to phrase this.
Like, all of the problems, in my opinion, stem from the government.
The best statement, in my opinion, that was made on this was General Ross. You have a team of American super soldiers infiltrating foreign soil every day to accomplish their goals, which their goals are good goals. Like, this guy has a vial of Steve Rogers' blood that he's going to use to create Hydra super soldiers or some crap like that. Yeah, you take that guy out, right? You make sure he can't do that, because Captain America, despite being one of the weaker Avengers,
you can't have a bunch of peak humans.
You still can't
around.
have that. So it's like, I agree with this, but at the same time, they still need oversight.
It's all the nuances that could come with.
Yeah, when you look at, and that's where the split that I feel the split between deontology and utilitarianism you can actually look at and say, yeah, let's do that.
I feel like
is when you get into the nuances.
I feel like the things that they do though is a good reason why we have both Steve Rogers and Tony Stark acting as leadership for the Avengers.
Well, leadership, loose in quotes. Yeah.
Because their differing viewpoints work together in a way that makes it where they can think of every.
Well, even then, like,
thing.
there was the reference at the beginning of the movie where Steve Rogers is talking to Tony Stark. And Tony Stark's like, once we get this in writing, we say that we're willing to work with you, we can actually work out the details of how that's going to work. And everyone who signs on will have a say. And Steve Rogers is still like, nope, goodbye, suckers. Middle fingers up, walks out.
But I would have trust issues.
I think it's
like he.
I think it was a fear of not. I think it was a fear of maybe it'd be kind of like a matter of.
Well, remember he said, "What if they tell us to go somewhere we're not to go somewhere that we're needed?"
But no, what I'm saying though is that it's kind of a matter of, all right, so the thing is that you have to sign on to get the argument. Yeah, and that's where Steve was like, I don't feel. What if something that I feel like I need to have a part of this deal, and they just say no? Then I'm ham-holded into just doing something I don't feel is right.
Well, at the same time, like, there's a difference between being a child and saying I don't want to listen to you.
Yes, and
well, I mean, Tony acted like a child right back.
I'm not going to defend him.
He was very reactive. Yeah.
But at the same time...
Yeah, I was trying to think of a word, but I couldn't.
But at the same time, like, Tony was probably the most reasonable of the two, in my opinion, in that movie. Like, yes, he was being forced to go arrest his friends. That was the issue right there. And a lot of it was because we have foreign super soldiers on... And, you know, no, we can't be doing this.
But the thing is that Tony didn't listen either.
Well, because Steve wouldn't listen. Anyway. Yeah.
Back to the point that we started.
Back to Infinity War, because we can have this conversation about
later
all day. I only started this because I wanted to talk about the nuances between the two. So one of the reasons why you can apply that neither one of them are wrong. You can be a deontologist and put duty first, saving all the lives. No, we don't trade lives. Or you can be a utilitarian, where it's like Spock's favorite line from the second Star Trek movie, where he's like, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one.
There's different times.
I think it was Wrath of Khan.
There's different times to apply it to different scenarios.
Yeah, and it all depends on the nuances of the situation.
Yes.
And I think going back to like Captain America, the first Avenger, there's your loophole. It's based on individual choice. No one can make you be the one that sacrifices for the many. And there's where an issue I find comes up, where Captain America was basically kind of a child in this movie, where he's like, we don't trade lives, despite the fact that Vision, in my opinion, he knew the risks, he knew what he was doing, and because this movie could have been a lot different.
Wanted to die, but he couldn't kill himself because he needed Scarlet Witch to do that.
And he didn't even need Scarlet Witch to do that. They could have just taken the stone out, and all they needed Scarlet Witch to do was destroy the stone.
But at the same time, she was like, if I destroy the stone, I'm destroying you, basically.
And to be fair, they did try. The moment that they realized it was a bust, Steve should have pretty much gone, yeah, we have to get rid of him.
Yeah.
Like, I understand they really wanted to have it done. If it wasn't for the fact that they pretty much got, that something went past their defenses, this could have been done. Vision would, but it didn't.
Well, even then, there was arrogance.
Yes.
We're in Wakanda, We have the force field that's powered by vibranium, the most powerful element we know.
I didn't like that T'Challa was going along with Cap. I feel like he would have been one of the first people to say, we're getting rid of this guy to save my entire country and everyone else.
Well, that also goes against his characterization so far.
He's always been
I've only seen him in 2 movies. In the first movie, yes, T'Challa from Civil War would have done it. I do
feel like he would do what he could to protect everyone. rather
Well,
than
that's what he
just
was doing.
keep
He was
one
also trying to
person.
protect Vision.
Yes, he's always.
But at that point, he's just protecting one person, and I feel like he would see.
So this entire thing really goes into much more than just the philosophical parts.
Yes. I'm focusing on the philosophical parts,
Yeah.
but that's the most interesting part to me.
So it's that versus the good versus evil debate. Because Vision is still part of this good, quote-unquote, team, and Thanos being part of the evil team, like, they want to preserve all of their good team and everything that they see as good and worth protecting.
And
Instead of just debating the goods of the
abstract
many.
questions, yeah. And at the same time, and I do understand this part, the option was presented. If we were fast enough, because they didn't know that they were immediately going to be invaded by Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive and Colossus Obsidian. They didn't know that the children of Thanos were literally outside their force field at this point.
They didn't know that they had a giant army of monkeys.
The option was already was presented to them, and they were like, "This is possible. Shuri can, do her weird vibranium Wakandan magic."
Like, as long as she was given time.
Yeah, if she was given time, and the
Unfortunately,
Infinity Stone could be
Thanos did not
unlinked.
give her time.
I love the
Yeah.
fact that you this is just one of my favorite scenes is that they're at the doorstep and you just see her start going from she's already going pretty fast. Like you're seeing how is she doing, and then she just cranks it up to an 11, and you just see how fast she's able to process all this.
But then she didn't even make a dent because she didn't have that much time.
Yeah.